Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to those that were part of our sessions earlier this afternoon as part of our virtual neuromuscular conference. Today's sessions have all been about exercise, maintaining healthy lifestyles, and we're really happy to go into our next session talking about weight and healthy lifestyles for people with neuromuscular disorders. Before I continue, I should mention that today's session is available in English and in French. There is an icon on your screen where you can select English or French. It's circled here. It's under the interpretation box. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Marie-Hélène Bolduc. She's one of our directors of mission who'll be able to also explain this in French. Go ahead, Marie-Hélène.
Oui, bonjour, bienvenue à tout le monde pour cette troisième conférence sur l'exercice et la santé pour les personnes atteintes de maladies neuromusculaires. Alors, je vous dis tout de suite, la conférence sera disponible en français et en anglais. Pour sélectionner la langue de votre choix, vous allez cliquer sur l'icône en forme de globe dans le bas de votre écran et vous choisissez la langue. Vous entendrez la conférence dans cette langue-là tout au long de la conférence. Alors, merci beaucoup. Bonne conférence.
Thank you very much, Marie-Hélène. So today we have Dr. Amy McPherson. Dr. McPherson is a senior scientist at Holland Bloorview Research Institute and associate professor in the Dalla Lana School of Public Health and Rehabilitation Sciences Institute at the University of Toronto. She leads the Profile Lab, promoting fitness and healthy lifestyles for everyone, where she oversees a multidisciplinary team of research staff and trainees conducting research around promoting health and well-being in children with disabilities. Of particular interest in her lab are topics such as overweight and obesity, physical activity, nutrition, sexuality, eating disorders and mental health, and wellness. Dr. McPherson is committed to ensuring research findings reach key knowledge users and regularly engages in knowledge translation activities tailored to scientific, community, and lay audiences. I'm also really pleased to report that Dr. McPherson is a past awardee of one of our MDC Research Seed Grants. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can be able to share your presentation.
Great. Want to confirm that's the right slide coming up, or the right view?
Looks great, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Wehmeyer. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk with you all. We're going to go on a little bit of a wellness journey today, talking about a few different aspects of healthy lifestyles and how that might look different or the same with a neuromuscular context. So I am a health psychology researcher. As my bio said, my research is all around health and wellness promotion in kids with long-term conditions and disabilities. I also like developing resources to help healthcare professionals, families, and children talk about those difficult topics. And some of them were listed in my bio, things like sexuality, mental health, sometimes weight management, and other topics that make us sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable. I am very interested in strengths-based interventions, and I'm going to talk about one of those today and share one of the research-informed resources that I've made. I will say all my research is with children and young people, but I think a lot of the concepts I talk about today are equally applicable to an adult population as well. So as I'm going through, maybe make a note if you do work with adults, what might be applicable across the board. I think a lot of the topics and the concepts are very similar. So my plan for the talk is to talk about what a healthy lifestyle is in a neuromuscular context. I'm going to introduce a wellness framework and then share a cross-section of studies that I've conducted around healthy lifestyles, the different aspects of healthy lifestyles in childhood disability, but a lot of in DM, Duchenne muscular dystrophy as well, included the funded work that Wehmeyer mentioned. And then we're going to circle back and sort of think, how can then people with disabilities achieve wellness in different areas of their lives? So part one, what is a healthy lifestyle? But if I was presenting to you in person, I would get everybody to tell me what their idea of a healthy lifestyle, and there would probably be as many answers as there were people. Now, stereotypically, this is what we kind of think about often, and is often depicted in the news and in media. This idea of being strong and lifting weights and eating tons of fruits and vegetables. But that doesn't necessarily look the same way for everyone. And we're going to sort of think about how we can broaden our perspectives on healthy lifestyles today. Now, I'm not a fan of focusing on problems and listing deficits, but I will just acknowledge that, healthy lifestyles can be more challenging in neuromuscular diseases because of muscle involvement and contractures, perhaps mobility limitations. There may be limitations put on physical activity, as well as sort of pain, fatigue, and decreased energy expenditure, osteoporosis, and so on. And I know you've had talks on some of these topics, for example, at the there was a nutrition talk recently, I believe. So just to acknowledge that it may look different for neuromuscular disorders, and so that's what we're going to bear in mind today, and look at different ways how things can be tailored to individuals depending on their particular needs. So I found this quote, and this is not to throw the medical profession under the bus in any way, but I think it does speak to our, we like to have dichotomies. We like to have, you're either well or you're sick. And obviously in a disability context, that's not the case, or I would argue that's not the case. That you can, I would argue you can pursue a healthy lifestyle, pursue wellness, just depending upon your situation, your abilities, your interests, and so on. And so we're going to really think about kind of what does health and wellness look like when you're not stereotypically the sort of person that has its functions and is typically developing in terms of children. And a bunch of children at Holland Bloorview actually agreed with that quote. They didn't see it, but what they told us when we went in to talk to them was so fascinating. Oops, sorry. That we run a busybodies program, and it shares different exercises, and they get to try out loads of different exercises, like yoga, adapted yoga, and wheelchair basketball, and all sorts of different activities they can learn about. And they learn a bit about sort of, cardiovascular sort of systems, for why it's important to exercise in terms of, muscles. And they get a very basic idea of what different exercises do, as well as some healthy nutrition ideas. And they make fruit kebabs, and it's a fun program. And so what we did before they started, in 4 different cohorts, we went in and asked them, like, what do you think healthy living? And we gave them a lot of pictures to sort out. Anyway, what was interesting was, they all agreed that people with disabilities can be healthy. They had a pretty stereotypical notion of health, in that eat well and move more. Although, like the vast majority of us, this was not always translated in their own choices. They had a big discussion around what junk food they love. And of course, that's all part of it. They also really valued sedentary behavior, so like sort of playing on games with other people or reading, and that was really central to their health as well. So I think we really need to remember that as well. And so really our takeaway was that, children might need some assistance just identifying things that they can do. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. All of us are like that. And sometimes they might need assistance to find out what rewarding health and wellness activities are that align with their particular abilities. And I think the key word there is rewarding. None of us want to do stuff that we don't enjoy. And so that's really key when we're thinking about how we can support people's healthy lifestyle choices and healthy lifestyle behaviors. So that was just a sort of a mini introduction to it. And I want to now think about wellness. And so there's no, health and wellness are often used together, and they're sort of very blurred boundaries. But I really love this definition of wellness as individuals living to their fullest potential. And I don't think there's anyone here probably today that would disagree with that being something to strive for all of us, and including people with disability or an NM condition. So we all hopefully have heard this sort of health is not just the absence of disease, but it's an active process of health and well-being. And wellness I really like because it's strengths-based. It's like, what are the things we can do to make ourselves feel good? Not, here's the list of things that we can't do. Now, medical care is still very much needed, but the idea in wellness is to integrate it into an overall wellness approach. And this involves some self-management of the client themselves, so things they can do to manage their health and wellness as well. So a few years ago, I and my team worked with, and we still are working with actually, Special Olympics Ontario, to develop a wellness framework for their athletes. Now there are there are many wellness frameworks out there, but none that were tailored to sort of the child kind of focus. And so we worked with them to develop sort of a new or tailored wellness diagram. And so when I was writing this talk, I was like, I think this could work. I think there's a lot of overlap, different population, different strengths and abilities. But I'm going to try and encourage you to think about this as I'm talking today, and we'll come back to it at the end. Now, in adults, you often have this spiritual wellness, and in children, we change it to occupational wellness, which is sort of the things they, well, as a colleague of mine always says, the things they need, love, and want to do. So that would be the one difference from other wellness frameworks if you're available, if you know them. So as I'm speaking over the next 35 minutes, I want you to think, what wellness domain am I talking about? Are there any other wellness domains being addressed at that time? Whose priority does the wellness domain reflect? And how might interventions address multiple wellness domains at the same time? And if you keep your eye out for this magnifying glass, there's some cheats along the way to give you a heads up. So part 3, and this is the longer part. I'm going to talk to you about a series of studies that I've done. And this first one is the one that was funded very generously by Muscular Dystrophy Canada. And it was based on the ideas that children with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, this was specifically in children with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, you know, the advancements we've had in medicine are, you know, amazing, and they're now surviving into, their 30s with mechanical ventilation. Excuse me. And corticosteroids have helped with that. But unfortunately, we're also seeing that about 3/4 of boys with DMD then have obesity by age 13 or so. Some of the challenges are because, you know, physical activity is decreasing, and then fewer calories are needed because of that. So there can be some challenges in managing sort of dietary intake there. And again, I know you've had a talk around specifically about dietary needs. So part of the issue is that higher weights do impact respiratory and cardiac function, obviously two of the sort of areas where DMD is known to progress. And so there is some concern that, you know, higher weights will speed up that confirmed progression of muscle weakness. So despite this, clinicians who work with boys with DMD are often telling me, you know, they don't know how to discuss the topic, they don't know how to treat it, they don't know how to approach it. And I will say that my personal perspective after many years of doing weight management research is that I do not consider larger bodies, higher weights, to be inherently unhealthy. But I think there are some challenges in this population because of the impact it has on respiratory function and cardiac function. So in other populations, I might talk about it slightly differently, but you might see that as we progress. So despite the challenges, there's quite a few papers saying that yes, obesity is a problem, but there's a real lack of literature saying how healthcare professionals managing it and having these discussions with boys and families. And what are the families' experiences and priorities? What do they want to talk about, and what do they want to work on? So that's what the study we got funded by Muscular Dystrophy Canada, and it's currently under review at Disability and Rehabilitation. So it was a qualitative study which sought to understand the experiences and key priorities of children with DMD, parents, and healthcare professionals. And this was around weight and weight management, but a lot of the questions you'll see from the responses are around healthy living more generally, and health behaviors more broadly as well. So we did individual semi-structured interviews, and we used thematic analysis. And if there are any researchers in the audience, happy to talk more about that if they are interested. So what did we do? So as I say, we had individual interviews. We had a semi-structured interview guide with sort of questions around experiences, perceptions, things that had happened to them in the past or not, what things they would like to see. And we had 14 healthcare professionals from across Canada and a range of disciplines. We didn't have any OTs, unfortunately, occupational therapists. We had children who were 10 to 18. They were aware of their diagnosis. They could communicate in English, and parents, and they had to be a caregiver, primary caregiver for a child with DMD and be able to communicate in English. So in qualitative research, for any sort of lay audience, we look for themes. And these are generally topics that people talk about, but maybe talk about in different ways. And so we had two themes from the data, one which was about competing priorities of the three different stakeholder groups. And one was around the realities of living with DMD. And then within that, we had some sub-themes. So I'm just going to run through a few with some quotes, because I think they always bring data to life. So in terms of competing priorities, probably no surprise that healthcare professionals were primarily focused on the physical body and the repercussions of weight on physical function. Whereas parents did recognize the impact of weight on physical function, but also took a more holistic approach and really considered their child's psychosocial well-being sort of over more of the function. And then the children reinforced the traditional narratives around health, doing exercise, eating well, but they really didn't mention their weight, that much. And I should say that some parents did not let their child take part, or told us not to invite them because weight was a particularly difficult issue for them. So I do acknowledge we have a specific sort of sample here who do not represent all children with DMD. So maybe to bear in mind when we're looking at some of these quotes. So we have a nurse here who said, we know down the line that these kids are going to end up losing some of their mobility. And there's very sort of, very understandable concerns about higher weights, making them less mobile and having more difficulty to move around. And parents also agreed. So, they understood that their son, this is actually a father who had two sons with DMD who both took part in the study. They realized that there were some functional limitations that higher weights, can make challenging. So there was definitely understanding from a parent point of view. And so this neurologist was saying that also impacts upon these kids' independence and being able to do things for themselves and, on their own or with friends. And so there was definitely a psychosocial kind of piece to it that they were aware of. It wasn't just about sort of the biomechanics. But then we have parents. And so this mom was saying, they felt there was difficulty. Parents found it very difficult in many ways to not be able to do anything for their child. And so one thing that you can do for your child, even if they're in pain or, not able to join in things, is that you can eat and you can feed and you can nurture through food. And we did see some of that, and we have seen that in other studies of children with different other disabilities. the parental role and the need to nurture is extremely strong. And in some cases, that they wanted to use that and give them treats and, have nice things and frankly make memories with food. So there was definitely that broader kind of feeling from parents. So the second theme was around the realities of living with DMD, and all of the stakeholder groups recognized or discussed the fact that having any chronic condition, especially DMD, actually brought a lot of demands to people's day-to-day lives. And so here our social worker was talking about, so that the boys with DMD becoming isolated, and one of the reasons that might accelerate that is feeling bad about the way they look. Now, I would argue that weight stigma is the culprit here, and the children shouldn't have to change themselves to fit in with society's, but that's a whole other talk. But there was absolutely kind of acknowledgement from healthcare providers that they just want to do their, here at the end, participate in the world around them, that they just want to do the normal things that normal kids do. In fact, I've just given a spoiler for this quote, where Amir's mom was just like, he just wants to be a normal boy. He just wants to do the stuff his friends are doing. So with the background of DMD and the sort of the background of health behaviors and weight, really the priority was around trying to keep things as normal, in inverted commas, as possible. And of course, what's different with DMD than some of the other populations I work with, such as spina bifida or cerebral palsy, there is a trajectory of DMD, given that it's a progressive condition. And there was some, not giving up, but there was some resignation that with the medications they were taking, with the limitations on sort of physical activity and sort of fatigue, a lot of parents felt that there just wasn't anything they could do. It felt almost helpless, and they passed that on to their children, saying it's not your fault, it's the medication, and he said, but he's sad, he compares himself to other boys. So there is something around that sort of trajectory of DMD, and as it's sort of progressing, that is having, and the medication as well, that is sort of interacting to make it a difficult situation for people to work with. And then, which was healthcare professionals, I try to tell them the weight can have an effect on the progression. So they're being told this and they understand this, and then also feel kind of a little bit hopeless as well about doing anything about it. And make no mistake, weight management is extremely difficult with anybody. We haven't cracked it with children who are typically developing or adults without disabilities. So I think we need to also bear that in mind, that we don't have all the answers for anybody. And it's not just kids with disabilities who experience all these other challenges. And then something that really struck me whilst reading these transcripts is around the kind of labor, we call it the labor of DMD. And it's really all the things that these families are having to do that other people don't have to do, people who don't have a sort of someone with a disability, around the therapies and, kind of the eating certain things and doing their exercises. And Tim was quite indignant about this, and I think rightly so. Is that, he sort of said, well, you try it for a week, in a way that only a 17-year-old can say. But, like, you'll see how difficult it is. And you're saying, well, all you have to do is just, we're quite good at giving advice. And I think it's always with the best of intentions. And sometimes we may need to take a step back and think, what are they doing and dealing with already? And how can we work with them to do things that are meaningful for them and doable and seem reasonable? And I think this idea of priorities, no one's going to work on something that's not a priority to them. So it really highlights, I think, how you have to collaborate to work with these young people to figure out what works for them. And is there like a midway meeting point between what the healthcare provider wants and what the young person or their family prioritize? So just as an overview, see all these magnifying glasses, thinking of the wellness framework, you know, understandably healthcare professionals were focused very much on physical health, although, you know, absolutely did acknowledge other parts of children's lives that were important and families' lives. You know, in terms of families, they really talked about this balancing act, and it was quite precarious at times. You know, they were trying to balance the physical and the psychosocial well-being of their child. They understood what the healthcare providers were saying to them in terms of what they should. I always think, you know, you're in danger. Anytime you start using the word should, you're in trouble. But that they're hearing the healthcare professionals, they're understanding it and agreeing with it, and then they're going home and they have a child who, you know, they want to make memories with and support and nurture them. And then, as most kids do, they wanted to just be a kid and have fun. You know, that's their priority in life. One of the quotes I remember is, you know, I like candy and I like Lego. And I was like, but that's appropriate. That's developmentally appropriate for you to want that. So really just sort of trying to balance how do we bring everyone into the conversation. And that's a nice segue into sort of some reflections about how do we address weight management and healthy lifestyle behaviors. And of course, physical activity and diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors, you know, lead to positive outcomes on their own, you know, completely separate from weight management as well. So it's not that we're just focusing on the number on the scale by any means. You know, we really want to try and prolong kids' health and wellness, you know, around their sort of health behaviors. So how do we talk about this? How do we address this? That acknowledges that stakeholders will have different priorities, like the juggle that we were just talking about. How do we do that this is not stigmatizing? You know, weight, it should be your weight or your body size should be there, like, you know, your hair color or your eye color, or, you know, some other element, but it's taken on a huge amount of stigmatization. We see it every day in the media. And talking about it, because it's inherently associated with sort of negativity, people find it difficult to talk about. And then how do we support our people, you know, with that's clients of ours, family members, ourselves, to work towards personally meaningful goals? And I'm going to come back to that personally meaningful goals piece because it's really important. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But I want to introduce resource that I made with our knowledge translation hub at Holland Law Review, which really combines sort of about 8-9 years of research into sort of what healthcare professionals can actually do to foster positive weight-related conversations. And actually, a lot of the content isn't about weight at all. It's around, say, sort of healthy lifestyle behaviors that are going to help them live a healthy and well life. So for anyone interested in knowledge translation, we use the knowledge to action framework. And in it, we sort of hang all of it on these 5 key questions for healthcare professionals, like who should take part in the discussions, when should it be raised, what words should use, how can you engage families, and if there are any particular techniques. And I'm going to talk about one technique in a minute. But what we did, we developed some simulations based on the research. And the simulation I'm going to hopefully show you in a minute is based directly on the interviews that we conducted in the study that I just told you about. And at one point, if you look out for what the father says, it literally came from the transcript. So look out for what you think that one is. So I'm going to try and share my screen now. So I might just have to see if I can stop share. And hopefully, let me just make sure I turn the volume on, sorry. Okay, so it's about 6 minutes. Maybe, Wehmeyer, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see it?
Looks good.
Oh, thank you.
We don't hear the volume quite yet, but it
It
might.
should be any second now.
Hi, Mr.
Here we
Smith.
go.
Thank you for coming in. I just wanted to let you know that I spoke to Jackson, so he's doing his breathing tests, but I did ask him if it's okay if we discuss some of the issues and some of the results of the sleeping test that we did.
Okay.
Okay? So, I had some concerns. I wanted to show you. So this is a growth chart, all right? And if you see here, this is essentially where we would want Jackson's weight to be. But if you can see on the chart, he's way up here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real problem. So from the sleep study, what we've seen is, I think, directly in correlation to his weight, is we're seeing issues with apneas throughout the night. Something I'm quite concerned about.
What does that mean, though? What is apneas?
Apneas. Oh,
Mhm.
right. Well, apneas is temporary moments of basically either pausing or stopping breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as I said, I'm concerned because I do believe it's in a direct relationship to his weight gain.
Yeah. I mean, like, we've been trying our best, right, to manage our routines and, right, I mean, we're trying to cut back on the sweets, but it's hard to say no, right, especially when, right, if he asks and wants to go get ice cream, right, I want to be able to create memories, right, I'll always stop the opportunity.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, what I could do is I couldn't arrange a meeting for you with Jackson and a dietitian. That might be something that we could.
Another appointment? Right, like, my schedule's it's been tight, right, with everything. To have to go to another appointment, it's right, I feel kind of squeezed as it is.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can understand how that would be a bit of a burden, another appointment, right? Okay. If we could deal with this issue of the weight together, I mean, what would it look like, a good solution, or just one thing that we could maybe do differently to assist Jackson with this issue?
I wish I knew.
Well, take me through a typical day then.
Well, I mean, especially the last year or so, it's right. I had to add a little bit more, right? Like, I've had to help him out of bed in the morning.
Sorry, of course, there's been some changes in his mobility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and I mean, I do feel the weight, right, and it has made that part harder.
Right.
But I mean, once I get him out of bed, it's right. I have to help him with his morning routine, and then I have to right, help him change, and then at that point, then I have to try to quickly prepare a meal. So sometimes it's like what I could do. It's quick.
Right.
I mean, when he's at school, I mean, I tend to give him money to go to the cafeteria because he wants to be able to eat with his friends and hang out with them, and
Of course.
I don't tend to say no because I don't want him to. I don't want to just give him something and it makes him feel different, right?
Right.
I want him to have that independence to make his own choice.
Right, and we want to encourage that socialization and independence, of course. So, well, here's an idea. What about, you said you give him money to eat at the cafeteria?
Yeah, because I wanted to give him some independence and let him choose what he eats.
Okay. What if, here's just an idea, what if you maybe prepared a lunch? Maybe even something that you could do together. And
Mm-hmm.
he can take a lunch with him, and that way he has a healthy option for lunch. Maybe give him a bit of money so he can still participate, socialize with his friends. Maybe even once a week he can just splurge and just get his own lunch from the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
What does that sound like?
Yeah, I didn't think of something like that. I think that's something we can try to do together.
Yeah? Okay. Well, why don't we start with that? And what I can do is I can make an appointment with your neuromuscular team. We can incorporate the dietitian with your team, and I can meet with them and discuss what we've discussed today, and maybe this option of preparing a lunch. And we'll hash out some ideas. We'll see what we can do, and then I will have them contact you, okay? And they can discuss with you some of these ideas, and we can go from there. How does that sound?
Okay. Yeah, I think we can make that work.
Yeah? Okay, great. So let's do that. Thanks for coming in, and you'll hear from us very soon, okay?
Thank you, doctor.
Okay.
Okay, so that was a lot of buttons to press. So we use, we have a whole range of these simulations with different healthcare professionals and sort of different conditions. So that was the DMD specific one. And what we do when we do some training around using the casebook is when people watch those videos to think about, you know, how do you think everybody felt in during that situation? How successful was it? I mean, like all our videos, you don't want to make them terrible and you don't make them perfect. So we try to put a bit of each. And you just a little bit of suspending kind of reality, but that idea of like kind of working together about sort of recognizing the burden on families. There you probably saw the line, we want to go for ice cream and make memories. So there's some pieces in there that I think are really critical that sometimes we don't sort of think about. And the key thing is around what strengths did the family have? And that's really where we want to focus. And that's one that we have two strengths-based approaches in the casebook. And I'm going to talk about one of them now, which is solution-focused coaching. And then coaching generally is a theoretically based intervention for changing behavior. It's been used in a lot of different health promotion areas, including smoking, nutrition, physical activity. And the primary goal of coaching is to enhance something called self-determination, which I will describe in a second. But children with disabilities often have lower self-determination. And self-determination broadly is sort of made up of three components. Autonomy, being able to make choices, which often kids with, and frankly, adults with disabilities may have fewer choices to make meaningful choices about their lives. A lot of this is decided for them. This idea of competence, or you might have heard of self-efficacy, which is an innate sense of a belief in your own ability to be successful at something specific, a particular activity. And then that relatedness of feelings of support and acceptance that provide affirmation. And so this is really important when we're working with people, or we are working with ourselves and trying to figure out ourselves and healthy lifestyles, is to think about how we can boost these things. And today's topic is healthy lifestyles, and we'll talk about physical activity and diet in a minute, but this can apply in many, many areas of people's lives, and broader life skills in particular, and the way we move through the world. So solution-focused coaching came out of the solution-focused brief therapy movement in the 80s. It started turning into a coaching sort of model in the 97. There's a lot of data out there that show that using solution-focused approaches achieves the same results, but in far fewer sessions than problem-focused. And it's deceptively simple. It's not simple to become skilled at this, but it's based on, if it works, don't change it. If it worked once, do more of it. If it doesn't work, try something else. So I am just going to share a next video, which just gives you the background, and then I will finish up talking about one of our studies.
Atomwave presents Turning Problems into Solutions.
Can I confirm that you can see this?
We can't see it yet.
Okay, I will try that again. Oh, the beauty of technology. Okay,
People were cars. Fixing people problems
good.
Looks great. Thank you.
would be easy. Check the engine, find the cause of the trouble, replace the faulty part, and move on. But people are not machines. Focusing on problems and their causes is a great way of getting cars back on the road, but it's not much use when you're trying to help people move forward. Take Alex. He wants to step up to a higher management role, but he lacks confidence. Some people might try to help Alex by asking why he feels this way. Perhaps the answer lies in his past.
When I was a child, a teacher humiliated me in front of the class.
Or,
The other kids teased me.
but concentrating on the causes of his problem soon leaves Alex buried under an avalanche of painful memories. He knows why he lacks confidence, but nothing in his life has changed. He still feels just the same. Focusing on problems turns you into an expert in what's wrong. To become an expert in what's right, you have to start thinking about solutions. A helpful question to Alex would be, let's just suppose that something happened and you had all the confidence you needed. What would you be doing differently?
I'd have the courage to be honest with my team when giving appraisals. I'd be able to say what I really think in meetings. I'd be speaking at conferences and enjoying it.
Now that Alex has a picture of how he'd like to be, he has something to work towards. This novel way of turning things upside down is called the solutions focus. Instead of emphasizing what's wrong, why didn't you meet this month's sales target? Solutions talk encourages people to think about what's right. Well done for selling 5 insurance policies last month. How did you manage that? What did you do? People have all the resources they need to make their solutions happen. Some of those resources are inside them, like previous experiences, and others lie within easy reach, like support from other people. It's all about building on success. If something works, do more of it. And if something isn't working, do something different. Contact us at Atomwave to find out
Just going to go back to the okay. So I'm noticed of time, so I'm going to go a little quicker. So we can see that there's specific type of solution focused coaching for pediatric rehabilitation that some colleagues of mine created. And so you might think, what's that to do with healthy lifestyles? And so what we did was we used it with 5 boys with DMD to look at healthy lifestyles in terms of physical activity goals, and that was an example of a goal I will go through. But really, this study was around, is it feasible to use solution-focused coaching with boys with DMD around healthy eating and physical activity? And is it acceptable? Will the boys do it? Will their parents kind of help them do it? So we had a coach. They saw them 5 times. They did it virtually. We were obviously ahead of our time. This was a few years ago. And then they set a goal at the beginning and then re-rated it at the end. So we increased their perceived skill level. They increased their satisfaction level with their goal, as well as the actual goal achievement, which is more objective. These two are more subjective. This is more objective, which showed clinically significant improvements. So we asked them whether their goals were important, and they said yes, 100%. And that's perfect, because that's what the whole solution-focused coaching is. It's finding out what are the goals that are meaningful for the young person or the adult, and how can we work towards them. Now here he said the coach was helpful working towards healthy eating goals and physical activity goals, and they were a little bit split. And I was delighted, because the whole goal of solution-focused coaching is people shouldn't think it's the coach doing them. It's that self-determination. They should feel like they are doing it and they have the resources to do it. So this was really promising. And so then we talked about the resources, like you still need family members to help them if they were kids. But things like they wanted to do recreational activities, not structured exercise or sports. So we gathered some information about what would be helpful to help them get active, keep active, and maybe work on a dietary goal. So this led to CIHR and funding for a 4-year randomized control trial, feasibility trial, that we used involving kids with spina bifida and cerebral palsy in here. Results are pending. So just to wrap up then, this is the final part. So I showed you this at the beginning of the talk around the different facets of wellness. And what I've talked to you mostly about is we traditionally think about the physical, right? So weight management, being physically active, eating the right food. And we tend to just kind of put that all in the physical wellness thing. But hopefully what you noticed with all my magnifying glasses was, that actually within that, there is the role of friends and fun and family, working out with other people, or having, socializing whilst being active, the strong role of family. About trying something new, which might be their intellectual thing. So, reading up on a new vegetable or a new fruit that they could perhaps ask their parents to buy, so that family could try it, or finding a recipe they could be encouraged to. Of course, in the psychological wellness, it's that self-determination we talked about, that feeling confident, feeling that you've got control over your own choices, and feeling that people support your choices. I go back to that, helping kids do what they need, want, and love to do. So even though we might be doing a physical activity, it would be working with kids to figure out what do they really want to do, or is it school physical ed they want to take part in, or whatever. We talked about recreational activities, which could tie into that community participation piece, going out to parks and rec, out to the park. And then, some of the quotes were difficult and showed difficult emotions around self-esteem and weight management, and also their benefits of or the drive and nurturing from parents. So just to revisit the plan, and I'm 8 minutes over, I apologize, Hamira. Hopefully I've touched on all 4 of these things to really show kind of how healthy lifestyles can look different with different people, and some of the considerations we can think about when supporting people or ourselves with healthy lifestyles. So I'd just like to say thank you to our funders. As I mentioned, Muscular Dystrophy Canada was instrumental in this work described here. And thank you. I would take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. McPherson. No worries about going over this. This is important work, and I know much of our community, when they look on our grants page on our website and see that we have funded this project in the past, they'd love to know more. And so that's one of the reasons for your invitation here today.
Good, great.
I do see 3 questions, one in the Q&A and 2 that came in through the chat box. And the first 2 are actually relevant, or it's around COVID-19, which is relevant and reasonable and timely, I would say.
Okay.
The first one is, I have a child with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, has not returned to school. And so we have a loss of routine, engaging in school from a virtual perspective, and wondering about quarantine 15, increased weight since being at home since mid-March. Any tips or strategies for this family?
I mean, first I would say we have all done what we have had to do to survive this pandemic. I think there's a lot of guilt around that, and I think our body has carried us through it, and we can't feel too guilty about it. That's often associated with weight gain, and we need to create routines that are feasible. So even if it's maybe do like a 6 o'clock dance, like everyone dance in the living room, something that can be family supported, you can do as a family. Maybe one member of the family researches a park, when we can go to a park and not talk to anyone. The thing I like about solution-focused coaching is its philosophy. It's not really about solutions. It's about what is one thing you could do that make things just a little bit better. because big steps feel impossible. And especially now, we're so overwhelmed with everything going on. So maybe as a family, come up with something, or something I saw the other day was the wellness week. So each day of the week, pick one of those wellness categories and think of something you could do to boost that, whether it's get a new book, or, as I say, like have a dance party, or I'm obviously obsessed with dancing. You know, so as a family, come up with sort of some fun things, one small thing you can do that might make things just that. It's a move in a positive direction. It's not dramatic, but I think we have to do what we have to do, you know, to keep ourselves moving and doing what we can in this time.
Very good, thank you. Corinne had made a comment about whether she was curious with kids and youth, whether a mentor model would be helpful, speaking to someone a bit older with a disability who can give advice from their own experience.
Yeah, that's a great point, for sure. And I mean, at Holland Bloorview, we do have a mentorship program that people can come to if they're being seen there. But buddies are a great idea, you know, whether that's as an adult or a child, someone to you know, buddy with, who understands what you're doing and going through, who might be a few steps ahead of you and make some suggestions. So for sure. I mean, the good thing about being online all the time these days, the only thing is, you know, we can connect with other people in other areas of the country. So, you know, Muscular Dystrophy Canada is amazing at having that network. So there could be those connections made for a mentorship program. I really like that. And that has been tested in the literature as well, including children with disabilities. I think intellectual disabilities, I'd have to check. So there is a little bit of evidence out there that that can be helpful. Thanks for the question.
That's a great question, yeah, and great comment. Another client has mentioned that they have a child who's 8 years old on a clinical trial since 2018 and has gained significant weight, even though they've been eating healthy food, fruits, vegetables. What can they do now to manage the weight?
I know, and it's very difficult. Another population I've worked with is children with autism, and when they are put on antipsychotic medication to help with regulate emotional regulation, you know, and the family life gets calmer, but unfortunately it has that significant weight gain. So I really empathize with that. I wish I had an answer for you, but unfortunately, we don't know. It's same as I said earlier. We don't know how to manage the weight of typically developing kids, you know, consistently. So it's even more difficult. I would just go back to what I was just saying about picking one thing. Try one thing new. Maybe it's like one new vegetable and one new activity, or, you know, sort of research to go out and do something at the weekend. Something that's going to sort of move your body. So my friend reminded me that I gave you this definition a few years ago. It's about anything that gets your heart beating faster and you're feeling a bit hot and sweaty. So, you know, anything you can do to move your body in a little way, or do something different in your diet, you are doing everything that you can at the moment. And obviously you have your medical team to help you. So I wish I had a perfect answer to you, but I do empathize in the frustration and concern that situation can cause.
Great, thank you, Dr. McPherson. The last question I see here is, what examples of cardio can be done with little strength? Or are there certain devices that can help to participate in exercises when you have little strength?
So not being an exercise specialist, I would refer, there's an amazing website called NCHPAD, NCHPAD. It's in the States. And it has tons of different physical activities for different disabilities. They have a specific section for neuromuscular disorders, and that might give you some clues. But of course, always sort of discuss it with your clinical team before embarking on anything too dramatic, physical activity-wise, just so you are safe to do so. But they have some fantastic resources, so I would definitely try and go on there.
Excellent. So what I'd like to do is, being mindful of time, thank everyone for joining today's presentation. And of course, thanking Dr. McPherson for an excellent, very thorough presentation. We hope next time we can all meet in person and hear
Yes.
the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I'd love to meet you all.
Absolutely. And I wanted to invite everyone to tomorrow's session. It's a rapid research rounds, which is it's going to be a little bit different. What that will mean is short talks given by our most recent grant recipients from our most recent seed grant competition. I welcome you all to join that session at 1 p.m. Eastern, and feel free to send any questions to research@muscle.ca. Thank you to PTC and Biogen for supporting education initiatives like this. And thank you all once again for joining day 4 of the virtual neuromuscular conference. Have a great day. Take care.